As we try to enrich the quality of our life, to find greater fulfillment in our relationships, in our profession, and to make our lives a success, we discover the importance of the mind. This mind is the singular most powerful resource at our command. Lord Krishna said 5,000 years ago, Arjun, the mind can be your worst enemy. There are people whose mind keeps tripping them with anger, greed, desire, attachment, hatred, and envy. So the mind can be our most virulent opponent, but it can also become our best friend. That is why, Arjun, uplift yourself by the power of your mind. Do not degrade yourself. Where does this power of the mind come from? Sri Kameshwar Rao referred to it very nicely. There is an external reality that we are all aware of. And the laws of Newton and all the other scientists apply to external nature. We study them, learn them, utilize them in the engineering field. The Vedas inform us that is not the only reality. There is another world that exists within us. This is our inner world, the world of the mind. You come in contact with this when you dream. At night, when you go to sleep, you are seeing dreams. In the dream, you may go sometime from here to Bangalore or Chennai or Delhi or Kolkata. You are not doing it in the external reality. It is the inner world that is giving you the experience. And then, finally, when the mind also decides to switch off, you fall into deep sleep. At that time, you experience nothing. But when you wake up, people say, Sukhamahama swapsam. I slept very peacefully. Na kinchi dahamavedisham. I did not experience anything. But there is the inner world of the mind. Unfortunately, most of the efforts of modern science have been focused upon the external world. And we have ignored that inner technology of mind management. But the Vedas informed us thousands of years ago, Dve vidye veditavye parachaiva paracha. There is a material science which includes engineering. That is necessary in life to understand external nature and to harness its forces for our well-being. But there is also a spiritual science that discusses, explains to us the inner nature and the methodologies and tools to manage it and uplift it, to achieve happiness, fulfillment, and true success. So let us ponder over the nature of this mind. I like to compare it to a subtle machine that is fitted within and which is constantly generating thoughts. The thoughts that we harbor are also little bundles of energy. Now, there is the wave form of energy that we have become familiar with over the last 150 years. There are so many waves in the environment. You cannot see them. But if you take a radio set and start turning the knob, you will keep on picking up the AM and FM stations. These waves are all present in the environment. Our thoughts are also bundles of energy, and they are impacting us in many ways. First of all, they impact our body. That is why you look at somebody and say, "Why are you so sad today?" The person responds, "How do you know that I am sad?" You know, your sad thoughts within have changed your physical demeanor. And you look at somebody else and say, "You are extremely happy today." The happy thoughts within again change the facial appearance. So our thoughts have the power to lift our blood pressure, to lower it. They have the ability to create varieties of psychosomatic diseases. Most importantly, it is by our thoughts that we experience happiness or misery. That is why the Western philosopher John Milton said, "The mind is a place of its own, and in itself can make heaven out of hell, and hell out of heaven." If we do not apply ourselves to the technology for mind management, then we may, as Franklin Roosevelt, the ex-president of America, said, "People are not slaves of destiny. They are slaves of their own mind." However, Roosevelt would have been astonished to know that a philosopher from India 2000 years before him had said, "Jagat jitam kena," that was Shankaracharya, "who shall influence the world?" And he responded himself in his Prashnavali, "Mano hiyena," that person who has conquered his own mind. An ancient Chinese philosopher Chuang Tzu said, "To one who has controlled the mind, the whole world surrenders." All of these people realized the power of this inner machine. So what is the nature of our thoughts at present? I compare it to the first TV sets that made their appearance in India in the 1970s. Does anybody remember them? They would have the channel switch. And often it would not work well. So the scenario would be that there are lines coming, and then it goes blank, and then there's a dotted line, and then one channel comes and the other comes, and again the image starts slipping. That is the way our mental energy is getting dissipated at present. You think a little of this and you think a little of that. Why is this happening? If a car is going haywire on the road, there are two options. Either the driver is inebriated, intoxicated, so he has lost control over the steering. Or the other option is that the axle rod has broken, so the steering has lost control. Similarly, if we are unable to control our thought energy, there are again two options here. Either the machinery is defective, the hardware, brain. But I can safely assume that most of the people who have chosen to spend today evening listening to one bearded Swami speak about this inner technology, they have got good machinery bestowed on them by God. So the problem then is that we are not able to control it. If we sincerely ask ourselves this question, most of us present will say, Swamiji, you are right. There are times when I unnecessarily bring the same thought to my mind. It repeats like the ancient LPs. Before the MP3s were the cassette players, technology is advancing so rapidly. And before the cassette players were these vinyl LPs. There was a stylus that would be in the groove, and the LP long playing record would turn around, creating sounds. However, once in a while, the groove would be cut. So the same line would keep getting repeated. Main shayar to nahi, main shayar to nahi, main shayar to nahi. People would say, Band karo usko, it's got spoilt. Our mind also functions in the same manner. One teacher, he asked his students to lift up their glasses and said, are you feeling any discomfort? They said, absolutely not. He said, if I ask you to lift it like this for 10 minutes, then, the hand will get a little tired. And supposing you have to lift it for 6 hours, then what will happen? Then I will become exhausted. The teacher said, just like you become physically exhausted, why do you bring the unnecessary, worrisome thoughts of anxiety again and again and again to your mind? The reason is lack of control. So we feel our mind is lacking control. However, the Bhagavad Gita says that is not the case. All of you have the ability to manage this mind in a moment. It divides the mind into two parts, the mind and the intellect. Mai eva mana adhatsva mai buddhim niveshaya. The mind, the man and the buddhi. So the mind harbors desires, attachments, anxieties, fears, and the intellect accords values to things. This is important to me. This is unimportant to me. The intellect is the decision-making entity, and the mind desires. So if the intellect decides that ice cream will give me a lot of happiness, the mind repeatedly desires ice cream, ice cream, ice cream. This is how the function of the intellect and the mind happens. Now, in this mechanism, God has bestowed human beings with an intellect that has the potential to control the mind if it so decides. If you choose, you can definitely control the mind. For example, if I was to say, stay up all night, and you may even listen to my request and try, but after 12 o'clock it will start becoming difficult. The mind will request, I need to sleep, I am extremely oppressed. And by 2 o'clock you may admit defeat and fall asleep. However, if the intellect is brought into play, your boss says, look, your job is in danger. And tomorrow you have to make a presentation to the board. It had better be good, or you will have to leave. Now, when the intellect is convinced this night is very important, even when the mind wants to sleep, the intellect says, hey, khabardar, you had better stay awake. An ordinary person has the ability to control the mind. That is the reason why you never scold your boss. Somebody may be an angry person, but the anger all flows downwards upon the wife or upon the husband. The boss may insult you. You have come late. You must not do this. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The intellect tells the mind, look, it's very dangerous to be angry here. Control yourself. So you control the mind. And when you're speaking to your colleague, the intellect says that, you don't have to be too strict, but don't give vent to your anger. It may have repercussions. And when it comes to your subordinate, then you let go. So the boss gets annoyed upon the subordinate gets annoyed upon his subordinate, that subordinate goes home and gets annoyed on his wife. The wife gets annoyed upon the child, and the child gets annoyed upon the dog. Every time anger is only flowing downwards because the intellect is saying to be angry in this direction is very dangerous. Control yourself. I like to give the example of children. Parents say, Swamiji, my child does not study. Please explain something to him. I say, he is your child. Why don't you explain? Swamiji, he does not listen. All right, beta. Why do you not study? Uncle, man nahi lagta. My mind does not go there. What to do? Big problem. But that same child who's saying man nahi lagta, when that child goes for the annual exam, the year-end exam, he or she controls the mind. It's a 3-hour test with complete razor-sharp focus. The child is looking at the questions and putting in the best effort to answer. During those 3 hours, the child has developed complete focus. Now there is no wavering, not looking at the other classmates or out of the window. It is just the questions and the best possible answers. Where did this focus come from? The child had the ability. If that kind of focus the child had sustained through the year, he or she would have probably topped the board. But through the year, the intellect had different ideas. The intellect said, studies is important for my parents, not for me. The parents don't know anything. They don't realize the importance of video games. So when the intellect had other convictions, even when the student took the mind to studies, the intellect said, come here. This is more important. So what I mean to say is that all of us have been bestowed with this faculty of the buddhi, which has in its powers the ability to control the mind. If the intellect is enlightened with wonderful knowledge, it will automatically guide the mind in the proper direction. That is why the Bhagavad Gita says Buddhi Yoga. Now we have heard of Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga and Hatha Yoga. But in the Bhagavad Gita, this word is repeated 4 times. Lord Krishna says Buddhi Yoga. If you can utilize the power of your intellect, immediately you will bring the mind under control. So why is our mind, why are we experiencing that we are unable to keep the mind in the direction of positivity, productivity, well-being? The reason is the intellect does not have the proper knowledge. Or if it does, it is not convinced about that knowledge. So nobody can ever control the mind without enlightening the intellect with divine wisdom. I would like to share today some of that divine wisdom that you all may find helpful. And keeping in mind, it is very rare that one gets an opportunity to speak to so many engineers. So we'll make it watertight logical analysis. We will discuss Vedic psychology. There was the father of psychoanalysis, Sigmund Freud, and then he had his associate Carl Jung. And after that came Adler and Skinner and Maslow and McClelland, etc., who presented various Western viewpoints of psychology. We are going to today look at Vedic psychology. The Vedas say that we are all afflicted by mental ailments. There are physical ailments and there are mental ailments. Manas rog kachuk mein gaye, hahi sabke lakhi biralan hi paaye. Everybody has these mental afflictions, but only a few realize. What are these afflictions? Anger, desire, greed, hatred, envy. The Vedas look on them as mental diseases. Why do they arise and how can they be removed is what we will discuss in the next portion of this lecture. First of all, there is anger. It is so destructive. One person was changing the tire of his car which had got punctured with the stepney. In the meantime, his 4-year-old son on the other side of the car had taken a stone and was scribbling something. When the father had changed the wheel, he went around and he was horrified. He has ruined my new car. He took the spanner and started hitting his son on the knuckles. He overdid the punishment and the child's bones broke. He now had to take the child to the hospital. There were multiple fractures. When the doctor looked at it, he said some of these fingers have to be removed. When the child, after the surgery, came back to consciousness, he asked his father, "Papa, when will these fingers grow back?" The father was shattered. What had he done in the rage of anger? Extremely dejected, he walked back to his home. And his eyes went to what his child had written on the car. The child had scribbled, "Papa, I love you." Now his disappointment at his fit of fury increased even further. This is the demon within called anger, the mental affliction. And then there is another mental affliction called greed. Anger increases and subsides. But greed is such a thing that it is never fulfilled. No matter how much we have, we want more. And the whole life goes by. I need more, I need more, I need more. In other words, a person wastes all of life to satiate the greed. But that never happens. Even though we all know that we are going to leave it all one day and go away. As one poet said in Urdu, दुनिया में खूब कमाया, क्या हीरे क्या मोती, लेकिन क्या करे यारो, कफन में जेब नहीं होती. The shroud that covers the dead body to the cremation ground does not have pockets. I could not take anything with me. And yet this greed pushes us further and further and further. The Vedas recognize this as a mental affliction. However, they go further to say that these two are secondary. And there is another primary affliction, which is called kamana or desire. What do you mean by desire? Any kind of desire. I desire hot coffee, I really need it. I desire bodily comfort, it must come. I desire that people should not behave like this, they should behave like this. There are millions of kinds of kamanas. The Vedas say this is the biggest problem within. You may say, Swamiji, what is the problem with desire? In anger, we hurt others, we break property. In greed, we waste our time, energy, and life. In desire, you are only hankering for things. However, desire is the mother of anger and greed. Why does anger arise? If you make a desire and it is obstructed, that leads to anger. You wanted that your child should obey you and behave in this manner. The child refused to obey. Your desire was obstructed. That created the anger within. People say, स्वामी जी गुस्सा बहुत आता है, बाकी सब कुछ ठीक है. I say, बाकी सब ठीक है? हाँ, बाकी सब ठीक. Impossible. If anger is there, it is the child. Its mother must also be there, which is desire. Without the mother, the child cannot exist. It's a different matter that the desire is subtle. You are unable to discover what is this desire. Whether it is for fame or prestige or mental comfort or whatever it is. But that desire is leading to anger. So, if desire is hindered, it creates fury and rage. And what happens when desire is fulfilled? Does it go away forever? If that was the case, then life would be so simple. The problem is, every time you fulfill the desire, it goes away for a little while. And then it comes back with redoubled intensity. In other words, fulfillment of desire leads to greed. Why does greed come? You created this desire that if only I can have that brown crusted hot gulab jamun, I will be so happy. So you went to the restaurant and purchased 1 kg of gulab jamuns and left them on your dining table and said, let me go for a walk and work up an appetite, then I'll enjoy them even more. But when you returned, you found that there are no gulab jamuns on the table. You asked your spouse, I had left 1 kg gulab jamun here, where has it gone? The spouse said, my dear, don't you know your cholesterol is high and your sugar count is high? The doctor has said no unnecessary sweets. I threw it in the garbage. What? You threw the gulab jamun in the garbage. Now the anger came. So the anger came if the desire was obstructed. And supposing the desire was fulfilled, the spouse did not throw them away. So you got an opportunity to stick your teeth into that tasteful entity. Did you enjoy it? Swamiji, so much. Now, I need another gulab jamun. Have another one. Are you happy now? Yes, but I need another one. All right, you have eaten 4 gulab jamuns. Enough? Enough for today. But next week again I will want gulab jamuns. So, jo prati labha lobha adhikai. It is the fulfillment of desire which creates greed. If some simple person thinks, I have only this one desire. If that gets satiated, then I'll be at peace. That person is fooling himself or herself. Desire can be compared to an itch. When you have an itch, you have this yearning, I need to relieve myself by scratching. But does scratching solve any problems? After 5 hours, it has come back. The next day, it has come with doubled intensity. And instead, if you just controlled it, after a few days, it would have gone away. So, because desire is the cause of anger and greed, that is why the Vedas say this is the root of it all. The Kathopanishad goes to the extent of saying, Yada sarve pramuchyante kama yesya ridishritaha atha martyo mrito bhavatyatra brahma samashnute. That fortunate soul who has extinguished desire, kama yesya ridishritaha, becomes brahma samashnute, God-like. Such a big statement. If you can finish desire, you will become like God. The Srimad Bhagavatam says, Vimunchati yada kaman manavo manasisthitan tarhyev pundarikaksha bhagavatvaya kalpate. You will become like God. So then, desire is the root cause of all our mental miseries. If desire is fulfilled, it will create greed. If it is unfulfilled, it will create anger. And what happens from anger? The Bhagavad Gita goes on, Krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammohat smriti vibhramaha, smriti bhranshat buddhinasho, buddhinashat pranashyati. It leads to so many problems. So let's then find out the root cause of desire. If you can switch it off from there, then the subsequent afflictions will go away by themselves. If you want to create a blackout in Hyderabad, rather than going to every house and putting off the lights, just switch off the supply from the main line. Why does desire arise in us? Everybody has different desires. Listening to Swamiji's talk, somebody's mind went to the child. I hope my child is all right. Somebody's mind went not to child but to chai. When will he finish and I'll get my cup of chai? So all different desires are arising. What is the cause of these desires? Sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho bhijayate, Bhagavad Gita. The cause of desire is attachment. When your mind becomes attached somewhere, that is what leads to desire. Somebody's mind is attached to the bottle. Repeatedly those thoughts are coming. Somebody's mind is attached to anything, to golf. Repeatedly the desire for golf is coming. So it is attachment that is creating desire. This point is important to understand. We think it must be the intrinsic qualities of an object. Something is very beautiful. Something is very aromatic. Something is very tasteful. That is why it creates desires. But that is not the case. Tell me, is alcohol tasteful? Are Swamiji is so terrible, so obnoxious, so foul smelling. You ask the same question to the alcoholic. He says, "Kyun badnaam karte ho nirarthak?" The moment I pass by that bar and the whiff of whiskey comes, I sway from side to side. How come the alcoholic is experiencing desire for such a terrible thing? Because for some reason the mind has become attached. The attachment. One mother's child may be the most ugly. Mother doesn't care. Say, "Mother, why are you desiring this child? This child of yours is hunched back and got paralytic attack and has got pock marks and blind in one eye. Why don't you just love any child on the roadside?" The mother says, "You are crazy. You will never understand the heart of a mother. Until I see my ugly little child, I will not be able to sleep at night." The mother doesn't want any beautiful child. The mother wants that child to whom she has got attached. So, sangat sanjayate kamaha. It is asakti, attachment, that leads to desire, and desire that leads to anger and greed. Now, supposing we give up all attachments, there will be no desire, there will be no anger, there will be no greed. Problem solved. What then is the cause of asakti? Why does the mind become attached? We need to do this research like true engineers in the best principles of engineering philosophy, right till the very end. Why does the mind become attached? The reason is most important to understand. When we repeatedly contemplate happiness somewhere, when we revise this thought in the mind, there is happiness here, there is happiness here. It is our own repeated contemplation that results in the attachment of our mind. How did somebody get attached to cigarettes? So, with apologies to the cigarette smokers, somebody defined cigarette as a pipe with smoke at one end and a fool at the other end. But how did this sane and intelligent IAS officer get fooled by the pipe? The reason is he repeatedly contemplated. When he moved from school to college, he got a little newfound freedom, and he found his classmates making smoke rings. He thought, his personality looks very impressive. If I do the same, I will also look impressive. He contemplated there must be happiness there, and he tried it out, but it was such a terrible experience. Yet his friends kept on provoking, "No, we get happiness, you will get it." And the little bit of delight, after all, it had an impact on the brain. He started thinking, this is true happiness. And then there was once a day, then twice a day, then 10 times a day. And then the link got created. One cigarette is finished, I need the next one. That is finished, I need the next one. Now the mind has become attached. So what was the cause of this attachment? the person's own repeated chintan, contemplation. There is happiness here, there is happiness here. Nowadays, the field of neuroplasticity says that when you repeat certain thoughts in your mind, the brain, which is the hardware, which the mind, the software is utilizing, the hardware, the brain is endowed with 100 billion neurons. That is 10 to the power of 11. So when the thoughts are repeated, the neural pathways get created. And those thoughts come more easily and even more easily. That is the attachment. So the cause of attachment is our repeated contemplation. Now let me take you all to the last step in this logical link. Why do we repeatedly contemplate happiness anywhere? What is it that induces us to start thinking, isme sukh hai, isme sukh hai? The reason for it is our soul nature. Our real self, the Atman, is a tiny part of the Paramatman. And the Paramatman is an ocean of bliss. Anando Brahmeti Vyajanat. We are little fragments of the ocean of bliss. Swami Vivekananda, the first Swamiji to go to USA, he would begin his lecture, O ye children of immortal bliss. So, we are all children of immortal bliss. And here is where Newton's law gets applied. Sri Kameshwar Rao Ji had put a poser that do the external laws apply to the inner nature? Well, just like you have the law of gravitation, the earth pulls its little parts to itself. And that is why the apple fell on Newton's head. Now, apples will always fall, but Newton pondered, why is it falling down and why not up? And he discovered the law, the force of gravitation. Similarly, there's this force between the Paramatman and the Atman. The Paramatman is an ocean of bliss. We are his little parts. He is pulling us. That pull we are experiencing in the form of the desire for bliss, for happiness, for joy. So it is our nature to think there is happiness somewhere. Now, wherever we contemplate happiness, the consequence will be the mind will become attached. And once the mind is attached, we will experience the desire. And when the desire exists, there are two options. Either it will be fulfilled or obstructed. So either there will be greed or anger. When it's our nature to seek happiness, how can we avoid all of this? It is not so easy. Like somebody says, give up anger. What do you mean give up anger? Is it some kind of mala? Okay, here, I give it up. Easy to say, difficult to execute. And when it's our nature to seek happiness, all these afflictions are going to come. I am reminded of one centipede. The centipede has got 100 legs. But this unfortunate centipede developed arthritis. Now, human beings know how painful arthritis is. They have only 2 knees. And the centipede has got 100 knees. So imagine its plight when it was afflicted by arthritis. It was creaking its way up a wall when an owl saw it. The owl felt pity and said, Mr. Centipede, can I make a suggestion to you? Yes, please go ahead. I am extremely miserable. If you become a swan You will have only 2 legs. From 100 legs, you'll have only 2 legs. Your miseries will decrease 50-fold. The centipede said, that is brilliant. So, Mr. Wise Owl, how do I become a swan? Hans kaise banenge? The owl said, I don't know. I only make policy decisions. It's for you to figure out. Similarly, you can say, give up anger and greed and desire and attachment, but it's the nature to seek happiness. Then how do you resolve this? Fortunately for us, the resolution is very simple. Ved Vyas, the writer of the 18 Puranas, he actually penned down 400,000 verses in the 18 Puranas. But this one verse in the Bhagavad has got the solution to the puzzle that we are pondering over today. He says, Vishayan dhyayataschittam vishayeshu vishajyate mamanusmarataschittam mayyeva praviliyate. He says, O human beings, you repeatedly contemplated happiness in the objects of the senses, and that caused the attachment of the mind. Now, utilize the power of contemplation in the proper direction. Think there is happiness in being a truly good person. Think there is happiness in doing good. Think there is happiness in God Himself. When your contemplation happens in the proper direction, you will become attached, but to the proper things. You will be attached to more sublime principles. And when your attachment is in the proper direction, your desires will also be in the proper direction. And these desires, when they are not fulfilled, they will lead to anger. But anger will become your friend. Oh, we both graduated at the same time and this guy has succeeded in such a big way. What the hell am I doing? I need to gather myself up and try better. So when you become angry at yourself, you make anger your own friend to propel yourself forward. In the same way, you become greedy. Last year, I served the society by so much of charity. This year, I need to double it. This is the greed for serving more. In other words, when you have dovetailed all these anger, greed, etc. in the divine direction for the pleasure of God, they all become your friends. They all become uplifting. They all become purifying. But this requires your intellect to be convinced on the proper knowledge. And that is why Lord Krishna said, Buddhi Yoga Arjun. This is the science of the illumination of the intellect with divine knowledge. So, with due respect to the time, I have tried to limit myself to the time given, and it shall be my utmost privilege and greatest honor to try and solve the problems that you may bring forth in the question-answer session and to try and help you with the solutions to these. So, thank you all very much.
We are very much thankful for your lecture. The conclusion is also so much enlightening. Doing good is happiness. So, I would like to ask you that the real challenge, is it not the real challenge to ask the policymakers to distribute the public goods like education and health to the people at large? the low and the high.
If the policymakers acted in a more enlightened manner, it would definitely lead to greater happiness and prosperity in the country. There is no doubt. However, our asking the policymakers to do something will not work. They will act on the basis of their intellect. Where their intellect is convinced happiness lies, there are people who firmly believe that any which way you get the money, and that is what will make you happy. Right? So, merely our sharing this knowledge with policymakers may not help. However, ours is a lok tantra, a democracy. It is the people who elect the policymakers. So, if the people can be more educated with the help of divine knowledge, they will have the discrimination to make better choices. This will have to be a gradual improvement in a democratic country like ours.
I am very thankful to you for the you have given a lot to us, especially for engineers, and you have given the mind control and all that. Just like we control the machines, we can control the desires, mind control and all that. But for technology, the technology is improving. Day by day it is changing and it's giving lot of difficulties to the people, especially the younger generation. You go anywhere, they are only attached with the tabs, with the phones, and they are spending only with that most of the time. They are seeing movies on the mobiles and spending only that. I see only in the temples only old people like me are there. No younger people come. Yeah. We are. And another is, as technology for mind management you have given, this is all God's creation. I believe you also believe. What about human cloning? What do you say about human cloning?
Human cloning.
Yeah.
So I would suggest you just ask one question. All right. So because there's so many people who want to, I will answer your first question.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
So the gentleman has raised an important issue, which is that technology has advanced. However, the inner growth is not keeping pace with it. And that is why so many ethical questions are getting raised, like human cloning. What is the proper utilization of technology and what is the improper use? We have many issues like the genetically modified foods, and we have global warming, etc. All of this is a consequence of enhanced technology. See, the problem is that technology does not have any values. Technology cannot tell us this is good and this is bad. It doesn't have any moral values. And that is why the need for spiritual science. The technology places nuclear power in our hands, but it does not tell us what is its proper or improper utilization. And that is why by itself technology is blind. So the Vedas said that there are two technologies which you need to learn: the outer technology and the inner technology. Now, because of ignoring that one or marginalizing it, this imbalance is visible in the world. And if we wish to correct it, we need to enhance the propagation of this knowledge, the broadcast of this knowledge. The more it is received, the more people will find that the problems they are facing are addressed. Now they are spending time, like you said, on their mobiles. I have also noticed that when I go in the flights, the youngsters, They have their mobile and they're watching a movie. So that is a good way to entertain yourself, but there's so many better ways. And the point is, doing all this, one can never experience the true happiness that will satisfy the soul. And hence the search goes on. I am still not happy, I am still not happy. This search one day brings the person to this treasure chest of knowledge. Alright? If they could find true happiness in there, then the search would have ended. So, the more we can propagate the spiritual knowledge, the more we will find a happier, more satisfied, more contented society.
So, thank you, Swamiji. It was a very enlightening talk. My question is, controlling the senses is what you spoke, especially the physical senses. The other day, we all observed Mahashivratri, and most of the Hindus must have fasted and probably stayed awake all night. Now, to be honest, I did fasting, but all my mind was always on food and my next feed, and all my senses were to sleep. But still, with a lot of, shall we say, pangs of hunger and control, I tried to do that. But is that the right way of doing it, or do you think there's any other way of?
All right. Fasting, the Sanskrit word for it is upavas. Vas means upasamipe vasaha iti upavasaha. When you go and sit close to God, that is the true upavas. And that happens when we take our mind to God. So the true way of celebrating Shivratri would be that you sit and think about Lord Shiv. So fasting, in other words, not eating, was prescribed by the scriptures so that you don't get distracted. In other words, you're thinking of food day in and day out. So on this particular day, you don't think of food, and instead you think about Lord Shiv. Now the practical problem is that we have not transcended the body. And that's why on the day of fast, the mind is naturally going to the body even more than before. And hence the purpose is not served. That is why it is your personal belief. But from my perspective, if you eat and engage in bhajan, that will be a better way to celebrate Shivratri than to fast and engage in thoughts, when will it become 12 o'clock? What about keeping awake all night? It's the same principle there. That if you can utilize your waking time in remembrance, ultimately, what is the difference between religion and spirituality? Religion is the external, which says you fast and you keep awake all night. And spirituality is the essence, which says your ultimate goal is to purify the mind. So the day you develop the understanding, the mind is most important, then the ritualistic traditions, they lose their importance. That is why the Manu Smriti, which is a ritualistic scripture, says, Yamo vaivasvato devo yasta vaisharidistitaha tena cheda vivadaste ma ganga ma kurungama. God is everywhere and God is sitting in your heart. The day you believe this, there is now no further need to go and bathe in the Ganga or to go for a holy pilgrimage to Kurukshetra. All that was not wrong, but it was until you had not reached the higher level of understanding. Okay. Some hands. Okay. Fine. After this, we can send it a little backwards.
How to overcome judgmental thinking?
How to overcome judgmental thinking?
Yes.
The Bible puts it very well. It says, "Judge not, lest you be judged." Who are we to judge? We don't know the full background of anybody. We don't know the situations through which somebody has passed. Right? So, the way to avoid judging is to look at our own selves and to think that God has blessed me in so many ways, and what am I making of it? When we bring this humbleness, we feel that I am the worst person. That is the humbleness. And when we have that perspective, we are so concerned with trying to improve ourselves that we don't waste time in judging others. Okay, the hands are going up.
Hello, Swamiji. My name is Ibrahim Sibghatullah. I am a student. Thank you so much for having your humble presence in my city. I also want to thank Surya sir for sharing information on the WhatsApp group. Swamiji, it happens most of the time that usually some negative thoughts come in the mind. And the most shocking thing is, what I observe is these negative thoughts actually happens. They just, whatever I'm thinking, they just come into picture. And not just once or twice, they happens most of the time. So, is there any link between our thoughts and what is actually happening? And if so, how should I control it? Thank you so much.
That is the connection between the mind and the external world. If we repeatedly bring certain thoughts, we sometimes draw circumstances to our life. It is not a one-to-one correlation, but it exists. The external circumstances come to teach us an inner lesson. In other words, if we have thoughts of anger, then the universe creates situations that makes us flare up and realize the defect within. It brings our defect before us again and again until we are forced to face it and find a solution for it. Because the universe is under the control of the Supreme. So things are not happening absolutely at random. They are happening to elevate all the souls to the ultimate perfection. And that is why when there is a prominent defect which the universe feels we need to address at this point, then situations will keep getting created that make us see that defect and force us to endeavor to solve it. Okay?
My name is Sham. I have a question, Swamiji. Do you think technology can help in eradicating hatredness in society in present times?
Which technology? The inner one or the outer one?
Technology in the sense technology is technology, right, sir?
Technology is technology. Then you are assuming that there is no inner technology.
No. I'm saying about the technology which we are dependent on.
The external technology.
Exactly.
The external technology does not necessarily remove the inner defects. Now, in the academic world, there is amongst academicians very often hatred and envy, even though they have so much of external technology, but they have not focused on the inner technology. So, technology can help to the extent that it can broadcast the divine science that we discussed today. In other words, with the help of technology, you can hear this knowledge over YouTube or Facebook or Instagram. All right? And to that extent, it helps. But ultimately, until we take shelter of the inner technology, we will not have the tools to remove hatred. So, personally, from my point of view, I like to use all the latest technology in the broadcast of this knowledge. Sometimes people say, Swamiji, you are a high-tech Baba. Being an engineer, I must be a high-tech Baba because God has blessed me with that background. So you can find us on Facebook, Slidestream, Instagram, SoundCloud, Twitter. You can download our app on Android, on iTunes. You can listen to Radio JK Yog or go on and browse any of our websites. So we use all this technology to disseminate this knowledge.
Swamiji, we scientists and engineers, we believe cause and effect. You gave a beautiful model for the cause of anger and greed. That is, the cause is the desire, the effect is the anger and greed. But there are other things also affecting the mind, like lobham, moham, madam, macharyam. How the model, what kind of model that you want to give, linking up these four bad qualities of the mind, so that we can control them.
That is a very perceptive question. Lobham is greed. All right, so we have addressed greed. Now, the moham, moh is sometimes taken as attachment, which we have addressed. Sometimes it is taken as agyan. Ultimately, the cause of it all is the agyan or the moh. In other words, because we are in ignorance, hence we are contemplating happiness in wrong things. Hence we are harboring non-beneficial desires. Ved Vyas said, Agyanamevasya hi moola karanam. The agyan, the ignorance inside, is the cause of all the problems. If we can remove this agyan, then all the afflictions will go away. And now regarding the mad, this is actually, you see what happens is that when knowledge is explained, it is simplified and explained. Even in science, any engineering model has got so many assumptions in it. And that is why as an engineer, I used to think that engineering science is not as airtight as people make it out to be. When you are studying certain things, you are dropping, there's a sound energy which you are not considering. There are so many things where you just assume. What is the temperature gradient of gas flow in a turbine? So it's 1 by T1 to the power 4 by minus T2 to the power 4. Where does this come from? I would think the teacher would say, just assume it. It's a model from where you begin. Right? So we are making all these assumptions in science as well. So nevertheless, the point out here is about the pride within. Now, I simplified this knowledge and told you that the man has got two partitions, the man and the buddhi. If you want to go into detail, then more subtler knowledges, there's man, buddhi and ahankar. Alright? The ahankar is the pride. If I had gone into that, I could not have finished the lecture in 1 hour. So I kept that away and just explained it simply. But the ahankar will also go away when we have true knowledge. Vidya dadati vinayam. The jugnu, firefly, can be proud as long as the sun has not risen. But the moment the sun rises, the jugnu's ahankar is finished. So we can be proud in forgetfulness of the glory of God. But the moment we realize His splendor, there is no scope for mad. All right.
Namaste Guruji. My name is Krishna Prasad. I am asking one question. What is more important and powerful, heart or brain?
What is more important and powerful?
Mind or heart?
The mind. No, see, there's a difference between mind and brain. The mind is the software and the brain is the hardware. So which are you comparing?
Mind and heart, sir.
The mind and the heart. What is more important to consume, water or food? They are both important, right? Human life is an extremely complex phenomenon where you have to take people like you, not a sannyasi like myself, but people like you have to take care of your family as well. And you have to take care of your profession, your job, and also your health, and also your finances, and also society. And now Swamiji is saying you also have to take care of the mind. You have to balance all these things to succeed in life. So in the same way, there is no question of comparing which is more important. I would say that both are important.
Guruji, without desire, okay, without desire, nothing exists in this world. We all live by desire.
That's right. See, where is this question coming from? I said if you give up desire, then anger and greed finish. So he's saying we are all living because of desire. Without desire, what is left? That is the point to understand. In today's analysis, we did not say give up desire. We came to the conclusion you divert the desire in the proper direction. So have the desire to do good. Have the desire to be good. When you have these beneficial desires, the desire becomes your friend. Now increase it thousands of times. There are people who are tremendously inspired to make a difference in the world. It is not that the saints did not have desires. They had a millionfold deeper desire to see God, to be with God, and to realize God. All right? So, sublimate the desire from lower things to the higher things.
Pranam Swamiji. As an engineers, we have to day in and day out, we have to deal with contractors with conflict of interest to reach the organizational goals and the quality standards, and the interest of contractor is to make money. So what is there in the absolute terms we will not be able to achieve at any point of time. With the knowledge bestowed upon us by Gurujis like you, we will know something, but we will not be able to achieve in the practical field, in the battlefield. At the end of the day, we will go with a lot of dissatisfaction. We will not be able to, as we are not able to reach the ultimate. So how to handle the situation? Sometimes it appears that we have to run away from the system. How to handle this kind of conflict within us?
So this is the reality of the world. You have people who are trying to cheat you from all sides. And where does this wonderful knowledge fit into this scenario? This wonderful knowledge is still relevant. This knowledge is not saying you run away. In fact, that is what Arjuna wanted to do. He was on a physical battlefield. And when Lord Krishna explained your goal is not material success, he said, then forget it all. But Lord Krishna said, Arjuna, you remain there. Keep doing your duty and make the change from inside. Before listening to the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna was a kshatriya, warrior. After listening, he was still a warrior. So what changed was the inner consciousness. That is spirituality. When you learn this knowledge and embrace it, your inner consciousness will change. It doesn't mean that the people around will change. They may still want to cheat, but their efforts to cheat will not make you angry. Their efforts to cheat will evoke a mature and balanced response from your side. It doesn't mean that, okay, now I'm spiritual, come and cheat me. You have to be practical, otherwise, how will you live in this world? But you will become a more mature person from inside. And you will become free of anger from reactiveness. Instead, you will focus on solutions. Now, here I am encountering a cheater. What is the solution to this? When you become solution oriented, you will become a positive thinker, more productive and more effective. Yes.
Namaste, Swami.
So after this, let's start bringing the mic forward again. Yes.
During our discussion, you told that the soul is part of God. So my question is, if we see the physical world, a smallest atom of a gold or 1 kg of gold both have same property. So in the same manner, if I apply that we are part of a God, then blissfulness or a knowledge should be the inherent property. Then how to understand that?
Now that you have entered the realm of philosophy, I only repeated what the Bhagavad Gita says, Mama Ivansho Jivaloke Jiva Bhuta Sanatanaha. This Jeev is an ansh. Now your question was that if we are a part of God, there should be a similarity. And if that similarity is there, then why are we in such a situation in this world of Maya? So although we are a part of God, we have the same quality. He is Satchidanand, we are also Satchidanand. However, there is a difference in quantity. He is Vibhusat, Vibhuchit, Vibhuanand. We are Anusat, Anuchit, Anuanand. Just like there is the light of the sun and there is the light of the stars and the moon. All the stars and the moon together cannot remove the darkness of the night. And one sun comes, the night disappears. In the same way, because we are Anu, we are unable to throw away this veil of ignorance by ourselves. What we need is the grace of the divine. So the reason why we are here is we have turned our backs to that source of light, which is the Supreme. The darkness of Maya has overcome us. And the solution is very simple. You turn your face to the Supreme. You can call that Sharanagati or whatever, but that will dispel the darkness of Maya.
Pranam Swamiji, do you agree with the philosophy of Plato, who says there is nothing to learn anything in this world other than recollecting from our previous birth? As a technologist from an eminent institution like IIT, do you agree with this philosophy of Plato?
Plato's philosophy had some elements which overlapped with the Vedic philosophy and a whole lot of speculation in it. Plato was the disciple of Socrates. Socrates was the first significant philosopher in the Western world, and he was followed by Plato. So Plato's belief was that this sensory world we perceive is not the only one. That this is temporary, ephemeral and dreamy. And he said there is a world beyond this, which is eternal and immutable. He called it the world of ideas. And according to him, the soul longs to be free and go back to the eternal world. All right? So this was Plato's philosophy. He was a Western philosopher who did believe in past lives. The Tolstoy also said the same thing. Like this life, we have had millions of lives before, and we shall continue to have until we are there with God. However, these theories that they presented were kind of mental speculations. If you want to invest your life in accordance with the body of knowledge, I would say that is shallow and incomplete. On the other hand, just try out the Bhagavad Gita and you will find it is a vast ocean of reliable, authentic knowledge to which you can dedicate your life in accordance with that knowledge, and you'll find you quickly move on the path of auspiciousness.
Pranam Guruji, I am Dr. Srinivas Reddy. So you have given wonderful solution to I'm a motivator and a counselor actually, but you have given how mind and buddhi act together and give solution to so many problems. So what the real world now facing, the inner peace, which the conflicts inside, how to control and how to become a peaceful human being. So you have given a wonderful solution. I thanks once again, sir. Swamiji, this is just I want to say my gratitude.
Thank you so much for expressing your feelings. I deeply appreciate it.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yes.
Guruji. Thank you.
I look on myself as a humble servant. So this knowledge is not mine. I have received it by the blessings of my Guru and God. Everybody is doing their duty. My duty, my humble service to God, is to share this knowledge. And that is why I try to keep a very simple position. Like everybody is doing their duty, I am also doing my duty. And I must try and do it better and better. Yes.
Swamiji, namaskar. We experience heart. That is, we really feel happiness or sorrow at the place of heart actually. But many doctors say that's not a real thing. But we experience it. And recently they found that heart has memory due to heart transplants. And similarly, mind everybody experiences. But the soul, Atman, which we talk about, it is very difficult to experience unless you attain certain state of mind and heart. Can you enlighten us on these three things, how to attain the Atman's place?
It's interesting you have brought up this point. Now here I am just referring to the Vedic knowledge. We are all familiar with the brain, the hardware. However, the software, the mind, the Veda state resides here. And that is why in love and in hate, you experience emotions in the heart. The people have different propensities. Those who are very intellectual, they feel that their self resides here. Those who are more emotional, when they think, where am I? They connect with the heart. And there are others who are deeply spiritual, they feel the self resides here, in the Nabhi. Alright? So these are all different levels of consciousness. It's a very, very complex phenomenon. If we start discussing it, then hours will pass. But your question is, how to perceive the existence of the soul by realization. Now we all often think I am the body. But if we bring knowledge, then we practice to think, oh well, maybe I am not the body, I am separate from it. And we still identify ourselves with the mind. I am thinking like that, why am I so unhappy? People ask. I say, you are not unhappy, your mind is unhappy. But you are assuming I am the mind. So, oh my God, I am not the mind as well. And then there is the intellect. The intellect, we are unable to view the distinction between the intellect and myself. The tadatmya, the oneness is stronger. However, the spiritual journey leads to the awakening of the real nature of the soul, which is love for God. The more that awakens, the bhakti will lead to knowledge. The more your soul nature awakens, you will be able to perceive the distinction. This is the body and this is me. And slowly you will see the mind, oh, these thoughts, the mind is doing mischief. I will not associate with it. This is also different. And then as you struggle to go forward, you will start realizing the intellect is also distinct from you. And then you have the choice to control the intellect. I want these values and these beliefs. So it will all come as a consequence of your spiritual journey. Give it to the ladies.
Good evening, Swamiji. My name is Shailaja.
Good evening.
So, my question to you is how do you deal with complacency? How do you actually perceive it? Is it something, a negative thing or a positive thing? So, this question is coming, considering how this younger generation, our country is building on and moving forward. If they come across complacency, how do they even realize that?
Complacency in others or in themselves?
In themselves.
Complacency in themselves.
Yes.
Complacency is the enemy of progress. The moment you become complacent, I am all right, I already know enough, your efforts to progress further will stop. That is why it is said that in your efforts to uplift yourself on your spiritual journey, never be contented. Santoshastrishu kartavya swadare bhojane dhane. Always be contented in these things. Your wife or husband ab jaisa bhi mila hai chodo. Doesn't matter. Chalega. Be contented in your wealth. Be contented in the food that you eat. Trishu naivacha kartavya swadhyaye japadanayo. In your reading of the books of wisdom, in your practice of spirituality, the japa, in your charity and the good that you are doing, never be complacent. Always have this feeling that I have not done anything as yet. I need to do much more. It is not difficult to bring that sentiment because that is the natural sentiment of the soul. Your soul is yearning for progress, ever forward. So everybody's natural state is to strive to move further and further and further. You just have to prevent the negative ideas in the intellect and the negative thoughts in the mind. So bring good knowledge to your intellect that the journey is not complete. If it was, I would be truly happy. Or think, God has given me so much. What have I done out of it? So some way or the other, the trick is to always inspire yourself further and further.
Namaste Swamiji, I am
Namaste.
Swarna. I would like
Namaste,
to
Swarna.
know more about this Saranagati. Exactly what it is. Saranagati.
Sharanagati is a huge topic in itself. The scriptures say, Anukulyasya sankalpaha pratikulyasya varchanam rakshishyatiti vishvaso goptritve varnam tatha atmanikshepa karpanye shadvidha sharanagati. That this are the 6 points of Sharanagati. The first, to align your will with the will of God, to desire in accordance with His will, to desire what He wants me to desire. The second one, not to desire what He doesn't want me to desire. The third one, to have faith. He is always protecting me because He is my eternal Father. The fourth one, to feel gratitude for all the graces that we have received. The air we breathe, the earth we walk upon. The fifth one, to feel that all I have is His, not mine. And the sixth one, to do Sharanagati and also do Samarpan of the Ahankar of Sharanagati. In other words, if I was able to do any good, it was by His grace. I have no credit in that. This is Sharanagati.
Namaste, Swami.
Namaste.
It's a really very excellent, like perseverance.
Thank
for
you.
your discourse. I have one question.
Go ahead.
How do we feel the Deham and Dehi? Deham when I am alive, and Dehi, like how people still feel my Dehi is still around.
Yeah.
Deham and Dehi.
Deham and Dehi.
Dehi.
Deham is the body.
Body, and when I am alive.
Dehi is the inhabitor of the body, the real you. Lord Krishna says in the Gita, Kshetra Kshetragyayor Jnanam, the field of activities and the knower of the field. To understand the distinction is true knowledge. It's the same concept. There is the hands, the feet, the head, and there is the entity to whom they all belong. That is the real you. So to understand that distinction is self-knowledge, is self-realization. First you understand in theory, the body is always changing. You see your family album, there was a 2-year-old Swamiji, that is me. Then there's a 10-year-old Swamiji, that is me. Then there's a person getting married, Swamiji, that is me. So the body has changed so many times, but you say that is me. There's something unchanging in it all. That unchanging entity is the Dehi, the soul. And the engineering technology cannot reach it, because engineering technology is using material means. If an engineer wishes to determine how the car is functioning, then he or she will trace the movement of the wheel backward to the axle rod, to the piston, to the accelerator, to the ignition or the steering. But there's a driver who's operating it all. That is the essence of it. Similarly, a doctor will say it's because of the heart or the brain that the body functions. But in a dead person also the heart and brain are there. The soul has left. Now nothing is happening. There is no life. So you are the basis of life in the body.
Swamiji Pranam.
Namaste.
This is a question which I was contemplating whether to go or not to go. Today's multiculturalism. Yesterday the Pope was indulging into the Indian politics directly to the Archbishop of Delhi. We have our own forces where people from Pakistan say, you don't have to counter us, we have our own 30 crore brethren in your country who will counter you. In all this, as a proud citizen of this country, do I belong to my dharma? Do I belong to my state? Or do I belong to my country? This is where my unhappiness comes up. I am confused.
There is one spiritual wisdom and there is one practical knowledge. What we discussed was the spiritual wisdom. But at the same time, there is a practical knowledge. So the practical knowledge is that in order for your prosperity and the prosperity of the society you live in, you need to protect your country. Right? So it is an important function. The problem in our country is if anybody says, I need to protect my country, then people jump on that, oh, you are being a fundamentalist and you are being that. It is not a question of being fundamentalist. It is a common sense thing that there is a country that we live in and we need to protect it. So nobody has the right to invade it or to create disturbance in it, whether from inside or from outside. And when such happens, then we have the right to take proper measures for its protection. This is practical wisdom. And unfortunately, when that practical wisdom evaporates, then it leads to all kinds of vulnerabilities. Thank you all very much.